Hello, today we are on lesson 3B, adding integers day 1, part 2, or you can see this as adding integers day number 2. So again, students will be able to find the additive inverse of integers. Students will be able to find the sum of integers by comparing the integers. Students will be able to describe verbally how to add integers by comparing. And then this is important for many real-world problems like tracking your daily calorie count. Remember our vocabulary term, additive inverse, two numbers with a sum of 0. Opposite numbers are additive inverses. For example, negative 3 and 3 are additive inverses because negative 3 plus 3 would equal 0. All of them would cancel out. Negative 17 plus 17 would equal 0. And negative 324 plus 324 cancels out to 0. So those would all be 0 pairs. So those are called additive inverses. So we're going to be adding some of these up without necessarily drawing these adding and subtracting signs today, or the positive and negative symbols. Today we're going to be finding the sum by comparing. So for example, number 1. Number 1, I see that I would have 3 positives and 6 negatives. So we have to think, would I have some that would cancel out? Would I have some 0 pairs? Or would I not? And here I would, because they're different signs, we would have some cancel out. So different signs, let's have you write that in. Different signs means we find the difference, or we cancel some out. Different signs mean some will cancel out. Some cancel out. And so what ends up happening is we're looking at the difference of these numbers. So if I have 3 positives and 6 negatives, we'll have 3 0 pairs that will cancel out. We will end up with more negatives left over. And how many would I have? I would have 3 more. I have 3 more negatives than positive. And so our answer here would be negative 3. All right, well, let's look at number 2. Number 2, we have positive 11. So we have 11 positives. We have 3 negatives, and so that means some of these would cancel out. We'd have some additive inverses. Do I have more positive or negative? I have more positives. And how many more positives do I have? Well, I've got 8 more. And so the answer here would be 8, and it would be positive. So it'd be positive 8, because some of those would cancel out. Now, if I drew out 11 of these plus signs, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then I drew out 3 negatives, then you can actually see what happens here. So these right here would cancel out to 0, and we would have 8 positives left over. So when we have different signs on the numbers, that means some cancel out, so we're taking out some of those. Let's look at number 3, though. Number 3 has 14 negatives, and then we have 8 negatives. Do I have more positives or negatives? Well, obviously I have more negatives because they're all negative. So when the signs are the same signs, when the signs are the same, we end up just adding more. So nothing cancels out. Nothing cancels out. Nothing cancels out. So we end up adding more. So we add those numbers, and we get 22 negatives, So they're all negatives, and so we would just add those all up. Nothing's going to cancel out, and so we would actually add those numbers. They would all be negative. So there is a little rule to remember with this. If they're the same sign, find the sum. Same sign, sum. If they're different signs, find the difference. Different signs, difference. So we end up finding the difference between the numbers and then keeping the sign of the bigger number. So let's try that little rule with number 4. Number 4 shows us 27 negatives, and then we have 9 positives. Do I have more negatives or positives? Well, I can answer that. I have more negatives because 27 is much more than 9. And so then how many more? Here we would end up subtracting those numbers because they're different signs. So if they're different signs, we end up subtracting the numbers because some of them will cancel out. If I were to write out all 27 negatives and then 9 positives. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to find the difference there. So the difference between 27 and 9, if you need to do this, is 18. So I would have a difference of 18. Do I have more positives or more negatives? I have more negatives, so that means my answer would be negative 18, okay, because that's the bigger number, the bigger absolute value. Let's try number 5. I have 19 negatives and 19 positives. Okay, here we go. How many more positives or negatives? Well, neither of them are more because they're the same. They're additive inverses, and so we know the answer is going to be 0. Oh, this pencil keeps breaking. 0. On to number 6. We start with 24 negatives. 24 negatives. And then we have 9 negatives. Oh, they're on the same side there. All I have is more negatives, and so we add those together. And let's see, carry the 1, we get 33, and their sign is negative. So if I were to write all those out, all I would have are negatives, so we would have negative 33. Let's look at the back. Almost done with this one, and then on to the exit ticket. Let's try 25 plus negative 18. We have 25 positives, and then we have 18 negatives. So how many, or which one do I have more of? Do I have something to compare here? And I do. I have more positives, and so since these are different signs, they end up canceling out, so we end up subtracting, and if you need to do that, you can, but that means we would have 7 positives left over because we had more positives than negatives. On to number 8, our first number is 23, so we would have 23 negatives and 34 positives. 23 negatives and 34 positives. Which one do I have more of? Well, I definitely have more positive numbers. I have more positives. Since I can say which one I have more of, that means we'll end up subtracting these numbers because some of them are going to cancel out. So off to the side, you do have to set up the subtraction with the bigger absolute value first and then take away the other. So if you have to borrow, go ahead and do that. And then 14, oops, we don't have to borrow there. Mrs. Silva, what are you thinking? Here we go. 34 minus 23, 4 take away 3 is 1, 3 take away 2 is 1, and so I get 11 positives left over. All right, number 9, 27 negatives and 13 positives. They are different symbols. Some of them are going to cancel out. I definitely have more negatives, so we know the answer will be negatives left over. I'm going to subtract these numbers, and 7 take away 3 is 4, 2 take away 1 is 1, and so I would have 14 negatives left over. All right, use the symbols, a number line, and a comparison method to find the sum. All right, so we're going to start with the comparison method. Oh, sorry, there it is. It's over there. Silly. All right, so we'll start with the symbols. Let's start with 8 negatives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 negatives and 15 positives. All right, I guess I can draw that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I definitely have more positives than negatives. So here we're going to be canceling out these additive inverses. These all cancel out. So we have, how many 0 pairs do we have? We should have 8 0 pairs. There we go. Cancel all those 0 pairs out. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 positives left over. So my answer there would just be positive 7. All right, on a number line, remember I start at 0. So I'm going to put my first number up here starting at 0. We go negative 8, so negatives are to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's see, negative 8 is right there. So I'm going to end right there with my first line. So that tells me go back 8. That's a negative 8. But then I'm going to go forward 15. So from the negative 8 now, I'm going to go back forward 15. I know that'll get me 8. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So I'm going to stop that other line right here at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so it's going to stop right there. So I'm going to draw this arrow going back the positive direction, adding 15 to that negative 8. And we see our final answer here is 7. So once again, we're proving the answer would be 7, negative 8 plus 15. All right, and then the comparison method, we have 8 negatives, we have 15 positives. Do we have more positives or negatives? Well, we definitely have more positives, and so if we subtract those numbers, if we cancel out those other additive inverses, then we end up with positive 7. Okay, that's how we do it. So let's just try real fast, see if we can rapid fire these answers down here. Number 11, I see a negative. I see more negatives. Negatives, negatives, that means everything is negative, and we add those numbers together, and we get negative 92 altogether. Number 12 is one of my favorites. Positive 67 plus negative 67. All those would cancel out. Those are additive inverses. Our answer is 0. Number 13, negative 53 plus negative 49. We have a bunch of negatives. Then we add in more negatives. Our answer is really negative. How negative is it? 53 and 49 would make 102 negatives. I am definitely not writing all that out. All right, number 14, we have 11 positives and we have 40 negatives. Oh, we have more negative. And so since there's more of something, we'll subtract those numbers. We get a 9, we get a 2, and so we get negative 29 left over. On number 15, I have negative 131 and positive 5. I definitely have a whole lot more negatives, so my answer is negative, and 5 of those are going to cancel out. So to cancel them out, I'm going to subtract, and we get 126 negatives left over. All right, make sure that you try the exit ticket when you're done, and tomorrow we will play a game with this. Woo! Yay, math!